Labor and the Expression of Worth. Cautionary Tales. No longer will I identify with people who intentionally continue in falseness. Those who refuse to be honest with themselves about what they want or who they want to be with. People pleasers. Those of us who give away our will in relationships. We get stuck in relationships and circumstances that are not deep enough. We long for depth community. We settle for romantic love and all the slavery that it seems to produce, especially in the worst of us people pleasers. It is a great compromise of integrity when we give away our will like that. It is impossible for a boat to stay afloat when the integrity of the whole has been compromised. There are some of us who know exactly what it is like to surrender our will to another human being. Some people call this victimization. Some call it codependence, enmeshment. Sometimes we call it humility when we put ourselves below people, when we give them our will. Be careful of that. It is devastating to give away one's will in an unequal relationship by way of countless acts of false humility. Devastating. But I do believe there is a true humility. True humility understands its own consciousness as an unfathomably brief blip on the screen of deep time. And there's also this great fearlessness in true humility, the type of fearlessness that refrains from surrendering the light of that nearly imperceptible flash of individual consciousness that I call me, I call you, we call one an other. It is very important what we do with our will as we traverse this physical plane of reality. And when we surrender our will to an external ego manifestation, well, it can get pretty ugly. Yes, if this is my undetectably brief flash of consciousness that I call my life, I must manage it well. I must burn as brightly and for as long as I can. I must choose the company of those who have also made this decision to become the light. And we will shine on and on as our light informs one another until, as that seemingly insignificant light is now connected to all the other expressions of light, free of the confines of space-time, we find ourselves in the midst of the ultimate lighting project. Some of us showed up on the scene, these broken young men who had been crushed by biological fathers' inherited cruelty. We were the first generation to put our children in car seats, these eager fathers who changed diapers and listened to our wives intently. We held our inherited cruelty at arm's length like a voodoo doll in the vague shape of that biological father, sometimes sticking pins in it, sometimes giving it an honored place on our meditation table. We learned to describe our inner experience. We were told to talk about it. We became vulnerable. We played with our cards face up on the table. We repented of our masculinity because we saw the terrors that all the white men had done, especially that white man in the vague shape of the voodoo doll on the meditation table over there. Perhaps we gave up the steering wheel because we couldn't find the most direct route to the promised land. And we did not have the backbone to disappoint anyone, especially our wives. We are the generation of men that rediscovered the monster within as we tried to save the world from the patriarchy by crushing it in ourselves. Our fathers could give us no direction. They were entangled in their own unconscious inheritance, lost in themselves. Our wives chose us because our weakness made them feel at ease. It was not a conscious decision on the part of our wives. Their fathers had violated them too, right there in broad daylight, that place where Christianity's puritanical nightmare persists with the blessings of those of us who have been known as the evangelical. Many of us have been reverse engineering our social skills. When you are raised in an abusive and fearful atmosphere, social skills don't come naturally. Maybe it looked like we were present as we tried to fit in, but we were ever aware that we were not really ever in the group. We became nearly paralyzed by the terrible understanding of our own neediness. That awareness of our own neediness sometimes left us breathless. So we began to protect others from the monster within. We listened more closely to our wives, attuning to their needs. We followed their plan. We became feminists. Our brothers and our fathers warned us. They could see the power that we were surrendering. They scoffed at us and called us names. But these men, who had maintained some remnant of respect for their own masculinity, were suffering from their own brand of falseness, and they could not be heard by those of us who had put our metaphorical nuts on the proverbial chopping block in an act of submission to an equally unjust matriarchy. We had educated ourselves. We understood that our brother's machismo was just the other side of the neurotic coin that we called our neediness. But this understanding in itself did not offer salvation. All attempts, either passive or aggressive, to protect ourselves and others from our own neediness inevitably meant withdrawal and alienation, which only contributed to the self-loathing shame that was at the root of all of this. And this is surely why my little brother died by suffocating himself with a plastic bag one night, alone in his room, stinking of metabolized alcohol. We cried in therapy rooms. We learned to describe our suffering in detail. We discovered Vipassana meditation. The non-aggressive nature of Buddhism reinforced the turn the other cheek philosophy that we had learned from Jesus. We thought it would help, and it did, and it was necessary. The meditation, it helped us to see the confines of the prison that we had constructed for ourselves. But all our passive cheek-turning could not cure us from the illness for which we sought a cure. No, the meditation did not fix us, but it did help us to begin to see what was really going on. And we cannot forget all those pills that we agreed to take also. Our story would not be complete if we did not somehow include the part when we surrender our will to the pharmaceutical industry. Big Pharma does not make a good medicine man. There is, of course, much more to say about that. And it is after this odyssey that we understand how important it is to align one's own will with that deeper will, that will of love, that will of God. We are learning now to move through forms with forgiveness in our heart. Forgiveness is that choice through which we never surrender our own power, through which we do not surrender our will to any other than the deepest of wills.